email potion.
I'm buff. Um, well, speaking of the DC world and specifically Green Lantern, I wanted to talk about a book, a horror book that DC has put out. Initially, I wanted to talk about King in Black, but I didn't have enough time to pick up a copy or read the whole thing. So the book I've substituted the very last minute, which I think fits into our discussion actually pretty well, is Blackest Night by Jeff Johns.
Ooh, very nice. Ooh, that's not a bad one actually. Been a while since I've read it, but that was an early concept of the whole zombie reanimating superheroes one. Did
Yeah,
enjoy
I
it.
mean
Did
it's
enjoy
a
it.
pretty iconic modern theme book, I think. One of the ones
Hmm.
that are that has a lot of recognizable imagery, like the heroes being taken over. I have some figures right here of
Nice.
Batman. That's that's a little villain zombie Batman and the homie
Oh,
Superman.
nice. Very nice.
Okay.
No,
All right.
get your fan pics out of here,
No,
Julius.
I trust me. This has happened at some point on some forum somewhere.
Yeah, yours.
Yeah, I know. Once I get into stop motion, guys, it's gonna get crazy. Um, but Blackest Night by Jeff Johns, written by Jeff Johns, and
Mhm,
with the art by Ivan Rice, I believe his last name is pronounced. Um,
mhm.
is a zombie book, pretty much. I mean, it deals with the Black Lanterns and the Green Lanterns and everything, but it's really about the mission of this book is to bring back a lot of characters who have, at that point, died. This is in the
Right,
crisis
right.
pretty exactly like and what's really funny. What kind of hones that in is the opening scene here, where Hal Jordan, who was recently resurrected, is meeting up with Barry Allen, who was recently resurrected at the funeral site for Batman, who was recently
Mm.
killed by Darkseid in Final Crisis. So, you know, they're just talking about like, yeah, man, when I died, like Barry's saying to Hal, man, when I died, people cared. And Hal, when you died, you were Parallax. You're kind of a jerk. No one really cared when you died, Hal. Um,
Mm.
but the mission of this book is to give us some really cool imagery, and bring up a lot of characters who are dead. Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Reverse Flash, Hawk and Dove, I believe. Um,
Uh,
but you said you read this book.
a while back, so mostly the visuals stick with me, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the visuals, I love Ivan Reis's art. He did a lot of great stuff in this, and ever since, one of my favorite books that he ever illustrated was another Jeff Johns book, the Aquaman New 52 run. And
Ooh,
his work is very cinematic and epic in scale and everything. As an
especially
artist,
with Aquaman underwater. It's
oh
tough.
yeah, I mean, give this man water and he will draw it to perfection. Yeah. But as an artist, were there any panels in this book that took out to you, like it's kind of burned in your mind?
In Blackest Night,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly, and um, I there was this it was this like dark gritty atmosphere. I think it was the grave site of Batman
Hmm.
where he's resurrecting and he's coming
Yeah,
out,
like he's coming
but
out.
it's very like dynamic and at the same time it's I don't know if it's lightning or he's just using his illustrations to light it, but it's just very atmospheric and dynamic. Or that one stuck with me. Um, just the visuals for how they were designed, they weren't uh too like what's the word? They were a little corpsey, but they weren't too like I guess decomposed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it added a
Unless
nice
they were dead already.
Right. Who's the leader, the Reaper
The
dude?
Black Hand.
Black Hand. Okay, I wasn't sure. I think that sounded like a gang, and I'm like, I wasn't sure if that was a
Yeah.
gang. Um, but he was very corpsey, very Grim Reaper. So I was like, I like that. They didn't push it too much. They could have gave him the whole skeletal figure and everything, but it was like this weird hybrid. And they sort of kept that look with each hero. And I remember getting into the Injustice series when I think that came out, and part of the skins that they released were the Blackest Night skins. And I always
Yeah.
thought that was like really cool because I was like, oh, in comic version, seeing it like move around, it was cool.
Yeah.
Who knows if we're ever gonna get that animated?
Well, I would hope so. I'm surprised that this hasn't been adapted yet as an animated film. It was they wanted to had the Arrowverse continued on a little bit. They would have adapted Blackest Night. Um, I think
Mm,
in like a 10th season of The Flash, where we would have gotten a crossover with Stargirl and the Titans and Superman and Lois and Diggle would have finally become a Lantern and everything. Like that's what they were talking about. They were saying like, dude,
that was your John Stewart.
I know, yeah, dude, Diggle was he was the Lantern, dude, and I was so sad. What not that I with the Arrowverse, I fell off a little bit ago because I was trying to watch all of them and everything, but it was just so much. And
Yeah.
but Diggle was my
It,
favorite character, dude.
Yeah, no, he stayed strong. He stayed strong because I was gonna say, the CW shows they were, I guess, getting handed off after seasons that the directions were kind of like, okay, we're going here, we're going there. Um,
Yeah.
and with the Flash, I remember what was his character, Iris's father. I remember
Oh yeah,
at a
Joe.
certain point. Yeah, Joe. Okay, I like Joe. I remember at a certain point he was being like written a little differently in the later seasons, where I was kind of like, they never did this to Diggle. Why are they doing this to Joe? Like Diggle, he remained serious. He cracked some jokes, yeah, but like I don't know. I felt like it made everybody a little bit more PG-13 at the end of it.
Yeah, they
They
it's
lost the
funny
edge.
like
I'll say that. They lost the edge.
they kind of did. Yes, but well, that's what happens when you become a little more comic-y and a little more cheap. Your budget starts to show a bit, it's like because I remember Diggle being a badass for a while. Diggle was like straight up John Stewart, like, come on, Oliver, you need to start taking this shit seriously, man. And then, Oliver would say, enough, Diggle, enough.
Diggle.
I don't, that's like, wait, whoa, Oliver, calm down, dude. Don't call him that. You emphasize Diggle a little too, a little, oh, calm down. Uh, but anyway, back to Blackest Night. Um,
Go on.
uh, well, the art is, I think, the standout thing here. The story is kind of it's an action book, you know what I mean? It's more about spectacle and more about, a lot like what can we do
Mhm.
with the zombie story? What I really like about this is that it's kind of like a more it's funny you bring up kind of the PG-13 because I feel like this is a very PG-13 Marvel zombies in a way. You
Yep,
know, you
exactly.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
did you ever get that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, especially because like the nature of the resurrection and the movements of the zombies. I mean, or zombies, sorry. Like, what would you call them? Just lanterns, I guess, black lanterns.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
I
guess.
was
Well, I mean, some of them are zombies because some of them are like coming back
dead.
to from the
Yeah.
dead. Yeah. Like they bring back Ralph Dibny's dead wife as like you know, to come back and eat some brains and spread the infection. But I I guess
Mhm.
zombies is the right word, right? But
I
that's I guess the corrupted, right? Would that be a bit more
well, I guess
appropriate?
well, I was gonna say to get the ring, you have to die, right? So I guess you would
I
be a corrupt.
guess, but they take over like Superman and stuff. That's what's weird about it.
Do
Or do
they?
they? Or maybe
I
that's a
don't know.
different. I Yeah, right. I think they do take. I think it's just like, hey, we're gonna. if we bite you, if we ever get our hands or teeth on you, you're in, you know?
Hmm. Okay, so like
Yeah.
I don't. Did they do that? Did they do the whole bite infecting? Because I don't
Yeah.
remember that aspect of Blackest Night. But if they did, well, then that seems pretty zombie. That's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward.
These are corrupted superheroes that are spreading, it's another world-ending event, so it's a Tuesday in the DC world. And
Right.
what you know, a lot of the heroes keep their segments of their personality. They're just darker and more corrupted, and they use that to their
Hmm.
advantage, and which leads all the different colors of the spectrum. They have to team up and save the universe and everything, which is really cool. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's a fun little horror quote unquote comic book.
Definitely the PG-13 version of the zombies apocalypse scenario of your universe being Marvel zombies or being deceased. I think Blackest Night is a nice segue into those.
Yes, and well, that's a good point of bringing up those because the difference between this and those other books you mentioned is that since this is in continuity, it can't like people, no one can really get killed, or if
Hmm.
someone does die, they're not going to stay dead. In fact, this is a book to bring back a lot of dead heroes, so
Hmm.
it's going to be kind of held back. Whereas something like Deceased specifically is unfiltered. It doesn't hold anything back, and it gets
Oh,
gory and everything. So,
absolutely. I agree.
God damn it. And I guess one last question before we move on to the following story. Um,
Mm.
since this book is very much about atmosphere and everything, and since you aspire to draw, you have been drawing it for your whole life and everything, and you love horror, you love
Thank you.
comic books. Is is the Is atmosphere the key to making something emotionally effective when you're drawing it?
I think so. I mean, funny enough, I'm gonna say lighting. Lighting is key to everything. But then
Yeah.
again, lighting conveys um what's the word you say? Atmosphere. I think, and atmosphere does a heavy job in guiding where you should feel emotionally when you're looking at something. I feel like when you look at something, you get a very reactionary feel, like connection with it, and you see what pops out. The atmosphere is what's enveloping it, and you don't notice it because it's enveloping you. You don't notice the subtlety of it. Like your reaction, I would say, are the base emotions, and the atmosphere, the subtlety is what's under that, is like why you're feeling those base emotions, not just the immediate reaction, but like say that can you pull up the absolute Batman cover image?
Oh yeah, yeah. Here, let me. I threw it away. Like,
Just
get
chuck that out, yeah.
out of here.
Just to use that as an example. So obviously he's in the forefront, and your attention goes to him, and it's this intimidating factor. But then the subtlety of the atmosphere is the narrowness of it. He's blocking you from exiting. That only adds more to why you're feeling that way. So right away, what you're feeling, but the atmosphere, I feel, adds to the why you're feeling that way. Something very hard for, I think, artists to get specifically what they want you to feel. So I think part of the trick of the art is to do half of what you want someone to feel, and then leave a little bit for them to fill that in, or to meet you halfway, you know? Because for example, I'm pretty sure other people, when they see that image, they might not feel as claustrophobic or as intimidated, they might look up and see someone taking them away from that bad place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great point. I mean, that's what makes this book so compelling to look at. It's just like how dynamic a lot of the scenes are, and obviously how they frame them. But because there are a lot of images in this book that are kind of
Hmm.
reminiscent to that cover of Absolute Batman, and in like what they're trying to enforce, which is like the power, just the strength of these
Hmm.
characters, which is something that DC gets, they always do really well. And I think
So,
Marvel in their books they try to enforce like the personality, whereas DC usually tries to showcase the power, and yeah, we see a lot of that within Blackest Night, which makes it even more fun to read because it's like flipped versions of these characters that are trying to destroy everything versus
mhm.
protect everything.
I have a question for you. Do you think, um, writing wise, Marvel stories are a bit more compelling than DC stories?
Hmm.
I say
That's
this only
yeah.
because when I think of when I think of both Marvel and DC, Marvel's written such complex storylines that end up calling back to each other and intermingling in ways that we wouldn't have thought of. That I've left. There's a reason why I've loved them for years. Ever since I was a kid, and I can keep up with two universes. Now keeping up with hundreds of them and the polar opposites of them and the anti-universes of those. Like it's clearly just for fun, not to like take it so seriously. Um, but part of part of that also is like the lines that the heroes say, the moments that occur are beautifully written, and I think are always pushed by the characters in Marvel and the DC as well. But like when I think of Marvel, I think of the written words. I think of the 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 things that were confessed to each other, the regrets, Wolverine, the the pure dedication of Spider-Man, the just the way you can't not hear what Tony Stark has to say. Every character is written so well. And in DC, everyone is written so well, but in DC, the imagery is always so striking for me. The
Mhm.
words hit, but they never need a paragraph. They only need three or four words and then just an image of a hero doing something. And I always thought that was an interesting way of their perspective storytelling. Marvel has such an emphasis in the written word and it's so moving. And DC, I can think of so many iconic imagery, not to say that each one doesn't have their own, but to me, I feel like that's where their strengths lie, you know?
Yeah, I think that in terms of if we're just looking at them and we're trying to be as I don't know if objective is the right word, but if we're just looking at them for like face value, I think
Hmm.
that I think what Marvel has really perfected over the years is getting like the personalities completely
Absolutely.
right for their
Like
characters,
that is
to the point
you
where
in the comics. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. To the point where you're like you can like what you just mentioned about like not even having to see like a thought bubble to know what the character's thinking. Whereas with the stories, I think the stories at DC are more, I think they're a lot of the time they're more engaging. I think they're more seminal. I think
Yeah, yeah.
DC has more books that are defining for comic book, like what comics are than
Hmm.
Marvel. I mean, they both have everything I'm saying. You know, it's not
Right,
like they don't like this is exclusive to
right.
each one. But I
No,
think DC is probably more known for their icon status, whereas Marvel is known for their character work.
no, I can totally agree to that, and I'm not discrediting writing or imagery of either. I'm
Yeah.
saying strictly as an artist, um, the scenes that DC storylines that illustrate, they've always been so like they're easy to remember for me. They're like it's in my head. I might not be able to describe them too well, but for example, one of the most beautifulest images I've ever seen was in the DC comic. Was uh, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it was when a universe was made, and it was in the image of a sigil. and it looked so like I would have never imagined that, you know. It literally took my breath away. And Marvel has very, very great art, you know. But something what you said about it being seminal, where I feel like DC, they've always told these grand stories and these grand images that you're at awe. Whereas and in Marvel, they can do that with just two characters in a small scene, you know, in a small
Yeah,
setting, you know. Same
yeah.
effect, different styles, different techniques. You know, you DC, you're looking at everything as a whole. Marvel, they show you everything in just that tiny bit. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's a great example of what you're talking about for Marvel where um and this is like one of the thousands of like little stories that have been written from Marvel that are kind of like this, but it's like it's so small and character driven and perfect where it's about it's like a Wolverine book. Or I think it no, I think it's a
Mm,
Spider-Man annual actually, where Spider-Man like meets up with Wolverine on like in like a bar. It's like freezing outside, it's the middle of the night and everything. And
mhm,
like they're just hanging out and they're talking and stuff. And Spider-Man's like, what do you want me for? Why am I here? Like, what's the problem? And Wolverine's getting drunk and shit. And then it turns out that it's Wolverine's birthday, and he wanted
mhm.
to spend it with Spider-Man because Peter still believes in Wolverine being a good person. You know what I mean?
No.
Like
Uh,
that type of just small little, and it's so heartwarming and sad and it hits every emotion,
mhm.
um, it's amazing,
No,
amazing.
right. And what you just described to me, that is something I would read in a heartbeat. And that is something I wouldn't doubt that Marvel has perfected to a T, not just because of what you just described to me as a storyline, but because I already know those characters because they were written so well already. And that's
Hmm.
just the example that Marvel has, you know? Like
Yeah.
if you've already read it, you're already invested. And which is why I to swing it back to my earlier thing about why they don't do shows in DC. Comic fans are already invested in their characters, man.
Yeah.
You don't gotta leave too much to the imagination, you know. There's some that you can hold back, you know, but not a big secret. Everyone knows. Everyone's got the phone. They can look up the comic. They can become fans of it. Just give it to us. Just give it to us for now. That's all we want.
Well, I think they will. I would like to think that at some point in the DCU that James Gunn is doing, they will get to something like Blackest Night. Hopefully
Mm.
their interpretation of it, because I do expect to see different colors in the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Oh
In
yeah.
in the Lanterns show. Um, so
Mm.
I would hope they they really lean into that. God
I
damn it.
hope so. I hope they don't just get too focused on like all the movie universe, you know? Like there's
Yeah.
so many stories you guys can tell.
Yeah, man. Here's hoping, right? Here's hoping.